Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the incredible evolution, the massive scale, and the physical gateways of India's international trade. We're going to see how a nation's entire economic identity has totally transformed over the decades, shifting from basic, everyday survival to becoming a true emerging global powerhouse.
Let's jump right into the data, because these numbers are literally staggering. Back in the 1950-51 financial year, India's external trade was worth just 1,214 crore rupees. Fast forward to 2020-21, that number has exploded to over 77,119,796 crore rupees. That exponential leap really highlights the massive momentum of India's manufacturing sector, the impact of open government policies, and this aggressive push to diversify global markets over the last 70 years. It's not just a little growth, it's a complete metamorphosis of scale.
To wrap our heads around this transformation, here's our roadmap. We'll explore the global trade boom, the changing export basket, India's import shopping list, major trading partners, and finally, the seaports that act as trade gateways.
All right, Section 1, the global trade boom.
Looking at the big picture from the economic survey, you'll spot a really fascinating dynamic. Despite all this massive, unprecedented growth, there's a persistent gap. The value of what India imports just consistently outpaces its exports. Basically, they're buying way more from the world than they're selling. So they're running a classic, ongoing trade deficit.
Moving right along to Section 2, the changing export basket.
Let's crack open that basket and see what's actually in it. The data here tracks a profound shift. By the 2021-22 window, manufacturing completely dominated, making up almost 67.8% of the total export value. Meanwhile, traditional agricultural exports are hovering way down at around 11 to 14%, and they're facing incredibly tough international competition right now. It is a super clear picture of an economy pivoting straight from fields to factories. So, the real takeaway? India's export identity has dynamically transformed. Sure, you're seeing a drop in traditional agriculture like cashew nuts, but at the same time, there's a real bump in specialized stuff like floriculture, marine products, and sugar. But the true heavyweights today? Complex engineering goods, gems, jewelry, and refined petroleum. And they've got to be sharp, because they are going head-to-head with major manufacturing giants like China and other East Asian nations in these exact same arenas.
Okay, flipping the script, here's a Section 3, India's import shopping list.
The source material throws out this rhetorical question that really makes you stop and think. Why does India import edible oil in spite of being an agriculturally rich country? It totally challenges our assumptions, right? It makes us weigh domestic demand against domestic supply. Because, well, just having vast agricultural land doesn't automatically mean you can feed the very specific, massive consumption habits of an absolutely enormous population.
If we look back, the data tells a pretty dramatic story. In the 50s and 60s, India was facing severe food shortages, so a huge chunk of imports was literally just food grain for survival. But after the 70s energy crisis and the massive success of the Green Revolution, which basically secured the domestic food supply, that basket completely flipped. Food imports dropped off a cliff, and all that budget was reallocated straight into petroleum, coal, fertilizers, and capital goods.
And today, petroleum is a massive piece of the pie. But here's the so what. This petroleum isn't just gas for cars. It's the absolute essential industrial raw material driving India's rise in manufacturing and boosting the standard of living across the board. It is literally the lifeblood of their modernizing economy.
Let's move to Section 4, major trading partners. The geographical center of gravity here is pretty obvious. The Asia and ASEAN region completely dwarfs every other part of the world. We're talking about a jaw-dropping 29,118,577 crore rupees of import trade in 2021-22 alone. While Europe and North America are definitely significant players, India's economic umbilical cord is absolutely tied to its own continent and the surrounding Asian markets.
Finally, we hit Section 5, seaports, the literal trade gateways.
It's so fascinating to contrast the history here. Originally, the British built many of these ports as suction points. Their main job was basically to siphon raw resources out of the Indian interior and ship them off for colonial benefit. But after independence, the whole paradigm shifted. These ports transformed into dynamic, modern gateways built for mutual international trade and actual domestic growth.
Let's trace how this physical infrastructure actually evolved. Right after independence, in 1947, the partition dealt a heavy blow. India lost two absolute key ports. Karachi went to Pakistan, and Chittagong went to what is now Bangladesh. So India had to scramble. They desperately needed to build new facilities, like Kandla in the west and Diamond Harbor in the east, just to compensate. And man, did that spark an infrastructure boom. Just look at the capacity leap, going from handling 20 million tons of cargo in 1951 to over 837 million tons by 2016. That's just wild.
Today, the sheer scale of these operations is breathtaking. To manage it all, India relies on 12 major centrally regulated ports, plus around 200 minor or intermediate ports run by state governments. And to stay competitive globally, the government is actively bringing in private entrepreneurs to modernize these super complex logistical and unloading operations.
Let's take a quick geographical tour, starting over on the west coast, which actually packs a higher concentration of ports than the east. You've got Mumbai, the absolute biggest, sitting right on this massive natural harbor. But honestly, Mumbai gets so jammed that they had to build specialized satellite ports just to take the edge off, like Deen Dayal or Kandla, which handles petroleum and fertilizers, and the Jawaharlal Nehru Port, now the largest container port in the country. Heading south, there's Mormugao in Goa, famous for shipping iron ore to Japan, and Cochin, beautifully nicknamed the Queen of the Arabian Sea, sitting perfectly near the Suez-Colombo trade route.
Now, swing over to the east coast and the engineering challenges totally change. Take the Shama Prasad Mukherjee port in Kolkata. The British loved it, but it's 128 kilometers inland on a river, so they are constantly fighting massive silt accumulation. Further down the coast, Visakhapatnam is just a marvel. It's a landlocked harbor where they literally had to carve a channel right through solid rock and sand to reach the sea. Then you have Paradeep, rocking the deepest harbor for massive vessels, and Kamar Ajar in Tamil Nadu, which is another new satellite port, built purely to relieve the gridlock at the main Chennai port.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this? India is absolutely not hitting the brakes. They're aggressively looking ahead, aiming to actually double their share in international trade within the next 5 years. To pull that off, they're rolling out sweeping new policies, liberalizing imports, slashing import duties, and streamlining the whole licensing process. They are, quite literally, throwing the gateways wide open. Which brings us to a final, really provocative thought to chew on. As these modernized ports keep expanding and these new open trade policies take root, how will the massive weight of India's evolving shopping basket shift the entire balance of the global economy over the next decade? It's a huge question for the future of international trade. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer on India's global footprint. Keep asking questions, keep looking at the data, and I'll catch you next time.